welcome back. If you're new here, I'm Laura, I'm a hairstylist, and I'm dedicated to giving you all of my favorite tips and tricks so that you can make every day a good hair day. And today, I'm gonna show you how to do teasy lights. Teasing helps to blend the highlight color into the natural color without having to go back and add a root smudge. And today I'm only going to be working on this one back quadrant of the hair. I do have some other plans coming up for this mannequin where we're going to do some air touch highlights, traditional balayage highlights, and then regular foil highlights. And then when we're done with it all, we're going to compare all the different techniques so you can see the differences. Now, before we get started, I want to show you some of the different tools that you can use when doing your teasy lights. To start, I have a couple different combs here. You can use a traditional highlighting comb. This is a rat tail comb that has a metal tail, and this helps you be a little bit more precise when you're sectioning out the hair. Our next option, and I actually love this comb for teasy lights. This is a much bigger comb, and it was actually made specifically for teasy lights. And finally, we have a teasing brush. Now this brush has both soft and hard bristles, and it will give you a little bit more of a softer effect. Any of these tools will work. It's really just a matter of personal preference, but I'm gonna show you how to use all three of them. Next up, we have some color brushes. Now, depending on how much hair you need to lighten would make a difference on what brush you would go with. If you're just doing a touch-up and you really only need to add the color to a small section of hair, then a smaller, more detailed brush is going to be better for you. But if you have a lot of hair that you need to be lightening, just like we will today, you're going to want to use a bigger brush that'll help you cover more ground. Oftentimes, I will use both brushes simultaneously if I need to cover a lot of ground. I'll use the big brush to get the majority of the color on, particularly at the bottom, and then I'll use the smaller detail brush as I'm working my way up closer to the scalp. And lastly, we have our paddle. Now, I don't always use this paddle. In all honesty, I think that this just adds quite a bit more time into the color application, but it can make it a little bit easier for you to paint and be very precise. I also want to show that you have a couple different options when it comes to foils you use. And again, this is really just personal preference. When I'm working on a client where I have to cover a lot of ground and I'm doing a ton of lightening, I will use a bigger foil rather than a smaller foil. But if I'm just doing a root touch-up, then I actually really like using these smaller foils for more precise work. So I've already got my color mixed up here, and I'm using Pravana's Ultra Light Lightener with 30 Volume Developer. This mannequin has got pretty dark hair, and we're only working on one section, so that's why I'm starting with a higher volume developer. Now, typically when I'm highlighting, I do not use the same volume developer throughout the entire head. The reason for this is because the developer is what translates to the speed at which the hair processes. So you want to start with using a lower developer and then bump the developer up higher as you move throughout the head. This will ensure that the color will process evenly while you're foiling the hair. Otherwise, you're going to have to rinse the first foils you applied before you even finish the head. It's also very important to use a lower volume developer on fragile areas of the head. For example, the hairs around your hairline are very fine and fragile, so you do not want to use a high volume developer on those already fragile pieces of hair, or else you'll wind up with a lot of breakage. Now keep in mind that the larger sections that you take, the slower the hair is going to process. I know you'll get through the head a little bit quicker, but the more hair in each foil means the less heat that's going to stay in that foil and the longer it's going to take to process. Depending on the look you're going for, you can play with any variety of weaving and slicing when you're taking your sections. But ultimately, we want the whole entire bottom of this hair to be blonde. So I'm actually going to go through and take slices. All right, so we have our first slice, and we're going to take the comb and stick it about halfway down and push up. And then we're going to do it again, halfway down and push up. The hair that's left is what we're going to foil. Now, if you're going to use a board, take your foil, fold it, and hang it over the board. Then you can place the board behind the hair, tease the section up, and stick your comb there. That will hold those hairs out of the way, and this is the hair that you're going to be painting. Now, it's important to start at the bottom and really saturate the bottom of the hair because that's where we want it to be the brightest. Then I like to take my detail comb and feather my way up. Now for this first section, we're still pretty far away from the head here. For this next section, we want to differentiate this so that they aren't all at the exact same spot. So I'm actually going to go a little bit closer to the scalp for this next foil. So this means I'm going to tease the hair higher up. I'm only about a quarter of the way down instead of halfway. Now here, I'm gonna show you a different method for applying the lightener without the board. When I have a lot of hair that I'm lightening, I oftentimes like to paint the hair before I put the foil on. This ensures really good saturation. So I'll paint the underside of the hair and then stick the foil behind it. And a lot of times I like to paint the edges, kind of creating a V when I'm taking my sections. Now let's move on to a different comb. Again, it's really the same movements, it's just a different tool, so it's really just personal preference. And while we're at it, why don't we go ahead and switch foils as well. So these foils are nice because there's not as much folding involved. And then you just fold the foil where the crease is. Sometimes I like to close it in here too, just to keep a little more heat in. Something else you can do is instead of taking sections that are completely straight across, you can start taking diagonal sections. So we're gonna go, starting with the face, we're gonna take diagonal sections this way. And we're gonna paint a little bit heavier on this side because this is the side that's closest to the face. Now, if when you're painting, you get a little bit of lightener on the section above, don't fret. All you have to do is take a comb and comb it out, and it's gone. Now, if you got a ton of color on a section you shouldn't have, you may want to take a wet towel and wipe it off. But if you just got a little bit, a comb will do the trick. Now, can you see how we did this diagonal section here? The hair is still teased, but this is going to create this angle. This is where you're going to create some dimension. Now I want to show you another way to use these small foils. So we're going to apply the lightener with this small foil. And we're still doing a diagonal here. And instead of folding this foil, we're going to take another one and lay it right on top. Then we'll fold the sides. Now this is a common way to foil if you're working with somebody that has really long hair, but in all honesty, it's not my favorite method because you do end up using a lot of foil. All right, now let's move on to the teasing brush. Now I don't usually use this brush when I'm doing teasy lights, because I'm not super fond of using this thicker rat tail to section, but I do know others that love using the teasing brush instead. Now, can you see how low I'm keeping the lightener on this foil? We went up quite a bit higher on the last foil, and on this one, especially because it's a little bit over towards the back, I'm not gonna go as high because I wanna keep the brightness closer to the face. Another tip is to just lightly feather the color up. You're only really getting one side. You're not fully saturating the hair as you're getting closer to the root. Now keep in mind that if the hair is oily, it is not going to tease very well. Oily hair is very slick and the hair won't stay up this well if it's not clean. So this is very important that you really want to only do teasy lights on clean hair. Now, if you'll notice, I'm only taking slices here. The reason for this is because I am saturating the entire ends of the hair. We're starting from scratch here. Now, if I was doing a client that already had blonde on the ends and we were just bringing this up, I likely would not be taking only slices. I would be going through and doing weaving because I don't necessarily need to hit every piece if the ends are already all light. And when you're teasing, there really is no exact number of times that you should be teasing the hair. Because honestly, all hair is different, and some hair may be smoother than others, some hair might not tease as easily as others, and you may have to do it several times in order for it to actually stay up. So I don't want to give you an exact number of times that you should tease the hair. Just use your best judgment and tease the hair as much as you need just to create that difference there. Now, because this mannequin is missing a bit of hair and has some breakage, she's got a lot of hair that's coming up as I'm teasing. You may find this in anyone that has experienced hair loss somewhat recently because they've got a lot of new baby hairs that are growing in. So a tip for that when you have a lot of shorter hairs that are coming up when you're teasing is to hold the hair up above, tease here, and comb it down below. Then you can bring this hair up and over, and it's kind of out of your way a little bit more. Another benefit to painting the underside of the hair is that you can lay the hair over it and it'll hold the foil up for you. Now, since this piece is at the very top, I am going to use the smaller brush just to detail right at the top. Okay, now that we're done, the very next thing that I like to do is check the first foil I applied. So we're going to clip all of these up out of the way. And this is really just to make sure that you don't ever end up with any over processing. So we can see how this is processing here. And ultimately what I do with clients is I go back through after I finish the very last foil, and I go back through every single foil and I check if there's any areas that I need to re-hit with lightener, or if the foil's done processing, I'll pull it right out. I actually choose to do this instead of letting my client process. I don't typically ever put any of my clients under a dryer because I like to keep an eye on the color and make sure that everything is processing smoothly. So we can see here, if I zoom in, this is processing kind of funky. This is mannequin hair and it just undergoes so much processing before they ship them out that that's not uncommon. But we're gonna go ahead and re-hit this with lightener and see if we can correct some of that. Now, if you were to come across foils that needed to be removed, I take the foil out and I use a towel to pull the lightener off of it. Keeping the hair out of the foil will essentially just stop the processing. All right, so now we're gonna let this process for another 30 minutes. We'll check it again, but we'll likely wanna get her rinsed at that point. All right, now that we've got her rinsed, I wanna show you guys how to comb out the teasing. Now, depending on the hair type, most of the teasing will come out when you run the conditioner through the hair when you're shampooing. So to remove the teasing, you'll wanna spray a leave-in conditioner in the hair just to help you comb it out. Now, depending on the hair type, it may be easy for you to comb the teasing out, or it may be rather difficult. If you have tangly prone hair, then you may have a bit of a hard time. I recommend just starting at the bottom and being really gentle as you run the comb through. You'll want to work section by section, taking the comb and pulling those tangles out. All right, now that we've got all the tangles removed, let's go ahead and blow dry so we can see the result. Now, I did not put any toner on this. I'm gonna save that for another video, but I did use Olaplex Purple Shampoo and Conditioner. Alrighty, let me bring her a little bit closer so you can see the final result. You can see how well that's blended there, and honestly, she doesn't need a root smudge. So this is a really good option if you want to stay light, but you're a natural brunette and you don't want it to grow in really harsh at your roots. Keeping some darkness at your root can also offset any stark contrast, and it can sometimes be a little bit better for your skin tone as to not wash you out. All right, guys, that's gonna be it for this video. Leave me any questions that you have on Teasy Lights in the comment section. And make sure you subscribe if you wanna make every day a good hair day. Thanks for watching.